Halo 3 ODST, the final game in my first time playthrough to complete the entire Halo franchise of games in the main Master Chief timeline. For the last several months, I have ventured into a journey to complete the older games of this franchise, of which I had not played before till this day. ODST, the one that some have considered arguably the most underrated of the franchise, was the final one for me, and I have completed it. So what did I think of the game? Is it as underrated as some have said, given its standalone nature? Or is it one that left me feeling a little cold in the end? I'm going to answer those questions here in this video as we run through my review and commentary of my first time playing through Halo 3 ODST. So let's answer the first question. Is Halo 3 ODST the most underrated Halo game in the franchise? To give the most simplistic answer, I would say that the answer is yes, but only based off a certain theme within the game that I think separates it so much from all the other Halo games in the main timeline. That is the idea of the game being a standalone, separated from the rest of the Halo games with regards to the characters and the kind of gameplay systems and storytelling that it takes you through. Storyline-wise, it takes place in between Halo 2 and Halo 3, so there is a connection within the main timeline, but again, the characters are all new here, and you are following certain kinds of characters that are not Spartans this time, but this time are shock troopers. You follow this specific ragtag group of shock troopers as they drop into the city of New Mombasa in Africa, fending off the Covenant as they are invading Earth. Halo 3 ODST is also, I would say, atmospherically one of the better and more different Halo games, given that throughout a good portion of it, it feels like you were playing in a horror game. Stylistically, I think that works really well, given the situation that your characters are put in fighting off against the threat that they are facing. The planet is being invaded by a force that outnumbers them 10 to 1 in certain cases, and when you are in certain instances of playing as these characters, it feels like there is a sense of hope that is lost and a feeling of dread throughout many moments. I would say gameplay-wise, this is where the game finds its stride, as it is very similar to Halo 3 in the sense of how much fun it is to play. I really did enjoy playing this one, whether it was through the gun gameplay or the vehicle gameplay that does a very similar feeling to when you are playing a game like Halo 3, as I said. So again, to answer the question, is Halo 3 ODST the most underrated game? I would say yes and no at the same time, and to some degree I would say that it is definitely not at the higher portion of my ranked list of Halo games, but it is definitely one that could squeak in if on a certain day I was enjoying it more than other games in the franchise. I do want to touch on the characters because, like I just alluded to, there is a sense of dread and loss of hope within the stylistic nature of this game's themes when connecting to these characters. You are playing as a group of shock troopers who are meant to drop into the city, but an EMP blast from a slipspace jump off a Covenant cruiser sends everyone off course, and there are times where you have to play as each member of this group and fight your way through the Covenant in order to regroup up with everyone else. This is actually where I find the game to have one of its bigger weaknesses. The main protagonist, I guess you could say, that you play as is a character called the Rookie, who is your cliche, silent protagonist who you don't see the face of and doesn't talk. I might be in the minority on this one, but I did not find his story as appealing as others. I get the idea of what they were going for with his portion of the story in the sense that he represents the more dreadful and horror parts of the game. This idea that being a rookie, you are thrown into the situation where you have no idea what is in front of you and you treat it more as a sense of dread, knowing the horrors that await you. There are so many times where you'll just be walking around the streets at night in the city and you will hear absolutely nothing, or the game's music will chime in and give you an even bigger sense of not knowing what is around you. Just a quick note, I will add that I did really like the music in this game. It's got the Halo style to it that you know and love, but it also fits in with its own standalone nature within the themes of the game. But to get back on track with the Rookie, that's really all you get with his story. He tries to fit the pieces together of events that came before that he is somehow able to reimagine in his head with what did happen, which is how you get to the point of playing as the other characters in the group. The Rookie is basically behind everyone else when trying to regroup up with them, so I get what they were going for before, but I did not find it appealing. You could also say the same thing about the other characters in this group, who I think are one of the weakest aspects of the story. Sometimes it really did feel like these characters were just your normal grunts that you would think have different personalities to each other, but it doesn't come off as impactful as you think it does. A game like Halo Reach, with that Spartan crew, I think does an even better job of establishing different personalities and the types of Spartans that they are, and that game even had a silent protagonist who was way more compelling with his story and his ending than the character you play as in Halo 3 ODST. I thought that the voice acting here, along with the dialogue, was honestly pretty poor. Now, I understand that this game is old, and back in the day, I feel voice acting is just not as good as it is now. It feels like the voice actors are just reading the lines off the script, but not giving any emotional weight to them. The dialogue just feels very hollow and not serious enough with impact given the situations that these characters find themselves in all the time. One minute they are fighting a massive Covenant force, and they just kind of shrug it off nonchalantly with some quippy jokes that just don't land. Probably the only cool thing I will say about the character portion of this game is that I actually already knew who the character of Buck was, given I played as him in Halo 5. Given who the voice actor is as well with Nathan Fillion, and where that character goes in Halo 5, I find him to probably be the better character of the entire squad. Although I will say I really did not buy that romance angle that they added in with the character of Dare. Kind of felt a little forced that they just put that in there for the sake of having a romance kind of thing. Story-wise, the game also finds itself in the mud at points where, again, given the game's standalone nature and where it connects in with the main timeline between the other games, there's not much here that you can really take away from. There is a very important plotline within the game for our characters to go through, and it connects in with Halo 3, but I just didn't feel like the game's writing did enough to give you foresight into where that was actually going until you were getting closer to the end. It is said at the beginning of the game that they have to go in and find something due to the fact that they have the character of Dare tagging along with them, as she is a Navy intelligence officer. Whenever you hear the term Navy intelligence officer, that normally suggests the fact that they are looking for something. But like I said, you don't really get a good hint of what that is until the end of the game, where that eventually pops up with this engineer alien. An alien so important that it knows everything about the Covenant, and I think if I had known that way earlier in the game, it probably would have made the stakes for the characters and the situations they were in more impactful. The Covenant are literally about to glass the entire city of New Mombasa, and it doesn't feel like there's even a whole lot of impact to that scenario of rescuing this alien and getting out with it just in time. It's not really so much a jumbled mess of a story, because I do think that there are things that connect in well with the characters regrouping up, and then with this alien factored in, it just feels like the certain aspects of it in the script could have just been made more clear to us, the gamer, about what to expect. This storyline also just happens to connect in with the very end of the game with the epilogue, as we see that there is in fact a connection with other characters from the other games, as Sergeant Johnson comes in to inspect this alien that was rescued, as he talks about the fact that they needed to help in their campaign. There's a cool little moment between the two as the alien lights a cigar for Johnson, and that essentially showcases that a new friendship has started with this alien helping the humans. And this also connects in with the fact that this is now where you go into Halo 3 next after this, when Johnson goes to rescue Chief when he hit the ground on Earth at the beginning of that game. So in the end, I like that there is a connection, even if the rest of the game is pretty much just standalone for 95% of the time with its own characters and its own story. Let's talk about the gameplay again, because this is where, for me personally, a lot of this game could have gone to shit if it didn't work, and I was worried, given the fact that it is a standalone game and that I had never seen any gameplay from it before, that it would not feel as Halo-like in gameplay as other games. Thankfully, I would say that this is definitely the best part of the entire game, at least with regards to the campaign. There is no shortage of enemies to kill that you haven't killed before, there is no shortage of any of the different kinds of guns that you've used in other Halo games, and there is definitely no different of an experience when it comes to being involved in vehicle gameplay, which I think this game excels in, maybe not to the degree of Halo 3, but it's very close. I do like the fact that because you play as a shock trooper, you are given different kinds of guns than other forces within the UNSC, like the silenced M7 SMG or the M6C pistol. While not very powerful to other guns, I do like that shock troopers are given their own as opposed to Spartans, who could basically use anything they wanted to. The gameplay is definitely simplistic at best, but it's powerful enough to where you can have a good time playing it. Where it becomes different than other Halo games is with the minimap edition and the audio log intel systems. I actually find that the minimap in this game is a cool feature, given the kind of environmental layout that you are exploring. The map gives you many different kinds of ways to traverse around it, whether walking the streets or walking through buildings in the city. I really like this addition, and it adds more credence to the idea of a minimap even being in the game, given it's not that present in other games. The audio log intel is also interesting, as it's not as big of a deal as you think it is, but it is certainly a cool addition into the game to give you an idea of the impact of how bad it was when the Covenant came down and the chaos that ensued from it in the city. I didn't really care too much for the idea that the audio log focuses on a lot of this one girl, and I didn't exactly know where that story was going, so I could have probably done without that particularly. So those are kind of my overall thoughts of the campaign portion of ODST, which basically encapsulates about 80 to 85% of the game or so, given it didn't have a proper multiplayer. To bring back around to one of the other questions I mentioned at the top of the video, did the game leave me feeling a little cold at the end? I would say not necessarily, because I probably felt that way in a few areas, but not the overall experience. The biggest compliment that I can give Halo 3 ODST is that it gives me a hope for the future that the current state of the Halo franchise can move more forward in the direction of games like this one. The game is completely its own thing, other than the ending separated from the rest of the Halo timeline. It follows a new brand of character within the Halo universe that doesn't get a whole lot of exploration. I think the franchise needs these kinds of games more. It needs to be able to branch out and do other different kinds of genre games, whether it be a new Halo Wars or another standalone ODST style game. So it is basically something that separates itself also away from the Master Chief storyline, and I would hope that ODST is used as an example to show that to be the case. I remember back in the day seeing this game in my local Blockbuster arcade, and then also seeing the trailer for the first time in a TV commercial, and I thought that looked really cool. The Halo franchise is one of the most expansive lore-based video game series of games ever made, and I think it needs to go in a different direction like how Halo 3 ODST did all those years ago. The final thing I wanted to talk about with regards to the game is, of course, speaking to the fact that while again, it did not have a proper multiplayer, it did have a second online PvE mode called Firefight. This was the first Halo game to introduce it, and to this day, I think it's one of the best decisions the franchise ever made. The Halo games are ripe for PvE style gameplay, and Firefight spares no expense with giving you that awesome gameplay when playing with friends. I'm glad that the Master Chief Collection has this mode on it to play, and while it was tough to find players to play with, it was still decently fun. I would say probably a little too difficult at times, but the overall gist of the mode is just meant to be all about killing Covenant. I think to this day, when the mode was brought back into a game like Halo 5, this was just also another great decision. Warzone Firefight in Halo 5 is some of the most fun I've ever had playing a game. It is one of the big reasons why I have so much playtime on that game as opposed to other games in the series. I would really like to see this mode brought back in a bigger way in the future. I can imagine playing this mode back in the day was also really fun, just like how all the other multiplayer modes for the main timeline games were fun too. In my last video that I made about Halo 3, I mentioned the fact that the multiplayer was so fun that if I was somebody who was around back in the day, I probably would not have gotten off the game ever. And I think I can say the same thing here for Firefight and ODST. It just gives off those feelings. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of my video game analysis for Halo 3 ODST. This now officially completes my play of the entire Halo franchise minus the Halo Wars games. I very much look forward to moving forward into another video game franchise that I have yet to play fully. Comment down below your thoughts on Halo 3 ODST with regards to if you are somebody who played it back in 2009 and what your opinion on it is to this day in 2024. Be sure to give the video a like and subscribe if you are new here, and if you are ready for my next video game series playthrough, and turn on that notification bell to be notified when that comes. Let's also see if we can hit a goal of 100 likes on this video. And again, thank you all so much for stopping by and tuning in to this one. I hope everyone here watching has a great rest of the day, and I will see you all soon. This is Orion, signing out.